Today I want to continue the series of videos where I think about what different senses would change how we are, how potential our world is. And in the last 3 episodes we looked at how we would change, what could be different, how perception would be different, how our culture would be different if we had the smelling sense of a dog. And today I want to look at how would things change if we had if we could see different kind, not of colors, but different kind of light. First, I want to look at why we potentially see the lights that we do, and what are the reasons potentially why we are not seeing different lights, why we're not able to do so. And the first thing I think I want to address is just what's the word? Just the how practical it is, or just if it's even possible for a biological being to have senses to potentially see all different kinds of black light. We only see visible light. Visible light is only a very small spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum, and seeing different kind of light would mean we would see different or just more of the electromagnetic spectrum, and not all areas of the electromagnetic spectrum might be just feasible or doable with biological sensors. I honestly don't know about what would be feasible there or not, but it's just a consideration to just address at the beginning. I think that there might be some reasons where having sensors for certain ranges and wavelengths of light might not be possible, but potentially for different sizes of animals or living beings, or might be too energy intensive, or might need some resources or kind of a biology that animals would just not really develop, or would it just be difficult in certain environments to have that. I honestly don't know, but that's one aspect why we might not be able to see more lights than we do. But I think a very way bigger responsibility or reason why we only see visible light is first because of our sun. Our sun most of the light that our sun sends out and produces is visible light. Our sun produces a lot of other light spectrums as well. Mostly more it's in the infrared spectrum, but also of course a little bit more in the gamma direction. But then we also have the reasons, well, our atmosphere actually filters out a lot of the high energy spectrum, so beyond ultraviolet light, which we're not seeing, but that would be something that also is present here down on Earth, where we could then potentially see it. So that would be a light aspect that we could see. There's not a lot of natural, like X-ray or like gamma rays, that we could see. There are not a lot of sources there. Like again, from the sun produces some potentially of them, but especially our atmosphere and our magnetic field shields them from us. So there's not a lot of that on Earth in a natural way. And of course there's a little bit, but then of course there's the thing of what use would seeing that and sensing X-rays and gamma rays for a living being here on Earth. Like you need a use for a certain sensor, for a certain feature as a living being, because otherwise it's just wasting energy. And that can be a thing that animals do. It's like, I don't think evolution works in the way just because something is not useful that it doesn't exist. As long as something doesn't hinder you on reproducing and surviving, it stays. Like it's not that evolution makes the best things only possible, but bad things can just exist as long they are not worse enough to make some species extinct. But of course they would, if you have just some extra like waste on you as a living being that just kind of uses energy to just grow and to maintain, but that you then don't get a lot of use out of, means you just have to at the end get more food for something that you don't really need. And that's okay when things are going really well, but as soon as like environmental changes for whatever reason change and like the food supply drops a little bit, you might have just a little bit worse of a competition when it comes about food and survival compared to other species that might not have that much of unuseful features or sensors on them and are just a little bit more efficient with their energy management. And so you will potentially go extinct before them. And over long periods of time, these kind of features slowly, with enough crisis in an ecosystem that puts stress on beings, and then with that kind of makes them go extinct and just have natural selection in that way, that things are not likely to persist. But that also means just because it's not likely doesn't mean that it can't be a thing in evolution. So I don't think there's a big use of seeing X-ray and like gamma rays as a living being. First, because there's not a lot of natural sources, and the natural sources that exist, like ores and stuff, or some human waste, which is kind of natural in the bigger sense, but also not that much. Like having biological senses for a living being to detect them is not very efficient on an evolutionary sense, and just puts you on a detriment. And then again, there's not a lot of sources, not a lot to detect, and a lot of use in them for pretty much most life forms. So there's not much sense in having them, which doesn't mean that we don't want to look at what would that mean if it would just exist. Again, the other area of that is there's just not a lot of coming from the space. So there's just not enough. It would be very dark if you would only see X-rays and gamma radiation. The other area would be infrared, and infrared would be a lot more useful than the other area of the spectrum. But infrared, I mean, we have infrared cameras. We could see like heat maps and like heat changes. So for predators and even for prey, being able to see other animals through certain objects based on like heat signatures could be useful. So there is, I would say, a lot more use in being able to see infrared light than on the other side of the spectrum. But again, it's also, there's then a question like how feasible is it to have accurate enough infrared like eyes to see infrared in a high enough resolution that is useful. And on the source side, we don't really have an issue that there's not enough infrared information. I think that the issue more on the infrared side, again, might either be it's not feasible to have a high enough resolution that what you would get is useful, or not just like on a raw input side, but then also like what you would see. It's very dependent on the species and what they're like either hunting or what they would be hunted from. Quite a lot of predators on Earth are cold-blooded animals, and so you wouldn't really see them with infrared because they would pretty much just have the temperature of their environment. So they wouldn't stand out by having a lower or higher temperature, so you wouldn't be able to really see them very well with infrared. So that's not a big use. So there are just, I think, a lot of use cases where infrared doesn't do a lot. Also, you might also just be decently able to potentially hide, or if there are some that could do that, again, like even warm-blooded animals might adjust to that in regulating the temperature down if they want to hide. That would be a thing that in adaptation probably would happen. So how useful something like that would actually be in the end is questionable. Again, there's the issue of you would have a lot of environment, the potential you can hide in. Like small mammals, yeah, like if you would have birds, like owls, for example, some like predator birds who would like hunt small mammals, they would still like hide in earth holes, and the infrared signatures then would probably not be that much useful. And they already have very good eyes that they can even see in the dark and spots very small changes and movements over even far distances. So the usefulness of seeing infrared for predators or even for prey, to seeing if someone might want to lurk at them, in many circumstances might not be enough over what our eyes, or what like the eyes that we have normally on Earth already provide, and it might just be a lot easier. So I think that might be one of the big reasons why we don't really have a lot of infrared sensors in living beings on Earth, that it might just be very noisy and not a lot of else. In the UV area, it's potentially a little bit different. We have UV light on Earth in probably a decent amount that would be a feasible input source to see stuff. And there are animals, especially also with plants, to my knowledge, a lot of like flowers actually look a lot different, and plants look quite different, and are actually doing like attracting like bugs and insects with like colors in the UV spectrum that we are not capable of seeing, and potentially some birds and things, from my knowledge, see UV lights in a bigger spectrum. So that is a part that some life forms on Earth already see, that we just as humans are not capable of seeing, and other life forms probably as well. I assume it's just like more so, well, in what kind, again, what has again use for you? Because I don't think like for like humans on like, do we see animals that we want to hunt or animals that we might want to hide from? More, there's probably not a lot of use from UV light there. I don't know if any of our ancestors had such capabilities and we lost it, or if we never developed it. Any kind of that. There might be use in it. It might just be coincidence that we didn't develop it, and that our eyesight stops at the range in the UV direction that it stopped. But yeah, that's like most of my analysis of why do we have these senses that we do have. And my time for this talk is nearly over, so I might want to continue with how it would change tomorrow. So let's do it part 2 of this. I had fun. I had fun doing these thought experiments. I hope you have a nice day.